Hello, welcome to Bourbon Forage Fishing. It's 2024 now. We've just come to end at 2023, and BTAC season has dropped in Washington State. And lo and behold, we have BTAC here and in all its glory where it belongs, with the people. Finally, we've waited so patiently. When BTAC drops, of course, you have the 5 BTAC bottles. You've got Handy, Eagle Rare 17, and Sazerac 18. When these things drop, let's be honest, the real question is who's going to be the top dog in the flight? And the top dog in the flight is going to either be WLW or GTS, if we're being honest with ourselves, right? These are barrel proof bottles that are just of the highest, most elite order. Thomas Handy is a rye. It's wonderful. It's amazing. I love it. It's incredible rye, probably the best rye on the market. But boy, the depth, the character, the charm, the caramel, the fruits, just so much going on with these. These are always 1 and 2. And people will make top 5 lists and they'll put sometimes Eagle Rare up there or nah. It's nice to do that. Sometimes it's nice, but the truth is, a seasoned drinker of bourbon is going to want a barrel proof, and they're going to want one of these bad boys. So we're going to go head to head the best here. I don't know if I'm going to rank them. I probably will say if usually I find these to be just neck and neck, and it's if you put a gun to my head and make me choose kind of situation. Last year was a little easier because the 22 GTS was just so phenomenal, so good, and the WLW last year wasn't the strongest. It was also a lower proof. It was like 62. I had a lot of darker notes. I think that people weren't necessarily used to a WLW. It's still a fantastic, fabulous bourbon, but last year's GTS was just incredible. So this year, I know this isn't anything like the 22 GTS, and I know with a higher proof point, this year's 23 WLW is 66.8 ABV. So, and this year's GTS is 67.5. So the proofs are very close. So I think this year is going to be really close. And we're going to get into these, nose them, and just see what goes down, right? So George T. Stagg at left hand, WLW right hand. Let's just go back and forth here and enjoy heaven. Wow. Amazing. Okay, interesting. Immediate differences I'm picking up. The WLW is brighter and spicier, and I can pick up those kind of red berry fruits a bit. The corn doesn't seem as evident as in the GTS. Yeah, the GTS is softer and rounder. This is sharper and spicier, and there's a bit more depth of character with the Stagg. Rounded, softer, and the sweetness in these tend to express themselves a little differently. I always find George T. Stagg to kind of be a grape drink kind of sweetness, like literal like a grape soda. And when I drink WLW, I generally get visually a sense of strawberry raspberry jam, like a red jam is the vibe I get. So the sweetnesses do express themselves differently, and this is to be expected with the wheat. So here's a neat little trick that I use for nosing. Sometimes just get a bag of coffee grinds, sniff them, and it kind of resets your brain and helps you identify, because it creates a clash in your brain. Helps you identify these things. So let's go back and forth here. Just that creamed corn I pick up with the GTS that I won't necessarily pick up on the WLW. And I can really shove my nose in this higher proof stuff and not get burned. There's a little bit of burn. So with the WLW, there's a bit more burn. I actually picking up a little bit of maybe a coconut Coconut marshmallow actually on the nose. That's interesting. I remember this now. Yeah, there's definitely a coconut marshmallow vibe. Interesting, especially when you nose this next to that. It kind of brings out some different characteristics. Let's go in for the palate, starting with the GTS 23. Cheers. This is what life is all about. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's delicious. God dang. This year's GTS is very earthy. There's a lot of earthiness in the front. Earthiness, soiliness, not in a bad way, just kind of an interesting way. The front is very soily, earthy, and then that sort of slightly fades, and that grape drink sweetness starts building and building and building, and really explodes into the mid. I shouldn't say explodes, it just kind of is a very gradual up, followed by a tapering off. But the sweetness is very consistent in this. That grape drink sweetness goes all the way through into the finish, where you get a little bit of spices, some more earthiness. Not like the front though. Okay, now I'm really smelling that grape. God, that's delicious. That grape drink is just so good. Kool-Aid. Damn, that's good. The finish goes on and on and on. Still going. Tinkles down the back of the tongue. I can still taste that grape sweetness 15, 20 seconds after. The finish is long and elaborate. It's just gorgeous. That's a gorgeous finish. Yeah, earthiness up front, into that. I think that probably a lot of people call it dark cherry sweetness, but to me it's like grape cola. And then you get that tingling finish, spices into the finish. Oh man, that's good. God, that's such a great bourbon. All right, now let's get into the WLW. This should be rather enjoyable. Lighter and brighter, spicier. The finish in this is much weaker. That was a quick burning finish. Wow. So that's the first thing I noticed. The finish on the GTS seems way better to me. Interesting. So in the front, it's actually kind of not a lot. I shouldn't say not a lot going on, but just a small amount of sweetness and kind of some bitterness. Some maybe bitter barrel spice. There's definitely way more spice in this than the GTS. Way more. It's crazy. That sweetness though builds. The GTS was like this in the sweetness department. And the WLW is kind of like this and plateaus and then kind of boom, drops right off. This is much more of a roller coaster ride. Interesting. Let's try that again. This is a phenomenal. You know, a lot of people have ranked this WLW low. I don't buy it, right? I don't buy it. I'm not gonna. If somebody says, "Here's a bottle of WLW or Eagle Rare 17 or Sazerac 18 or Thomas Handy," I'm picking this bottle. If somebody, you know, if you win a lottery or something, you're gonna pick. I'm picking one of these two bottles, and guess what? Every single year, I'm gonna pick one of these two bottles. So I mean, no surprise there. But I mean, these are the kings of BTAC. Let's be honest here. The other nose is just a mega red jelly. Amazing goodness. Holy crap. So good. Let's try that again. Alright, the finish is an explosion. And I mean an explosion of barrel spices. That's insane. That's like a gunpowder finish. And that explosion, it's almost like, yeah, it's like a firework. This firework of flavor. It's sweetness. It gets super sweet, and then it just explodes like a firework. And the sweetness kind of disappears. Sweetness does disappear, and the grain just explodes into pure like spice, pure barrel spice. That's really a really interesting ride. That is. That's like a firework shooting up into the air. Sweetness, 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 and boom! Barrel spice at the end. And there's not a lot of sweetness or flavor on the finish, and it's not super long. It's kind of short and explosive, I would say, and spicy. That's a great, that is a great bourbon though. And of course the GTS. Let's go back to the GTS and kind of see a little back and forth action and see what happens, because the finish on the GTS is just hands down better in my opinion, or hands down more to my liking. It's a more steady, long lasting, sweet coach and wagon disappearing off into the horizon, you know. that sweetness just keeps going on and lingering. See, that finish is still going. There's a little bit of that explosion of spices, but not like WLW. Whew. Finish still going. Finish still going strong. The finish is still going. I can still completely coated with grape drink. My mouth is still going. Still going. Okay. It's still tingling though. Still the barrel spices. The finish on this GTS is just superior to this. Like the finish to me isn't even comparable. I think the mid here is better than the GTS. The mid is incredible because there's an explosion of sweetness that evaporates or dissipates or explodes into barrel spices. That mid to end is better. The front, this is kind of weak. It's sort of lightly sweet and bitter. This is lightly sweet and very earthy. I give a coin toss on the front. The mid is dominant here. The finish is way more dominant. This is way more dominant on the finish than this is in the mid. So I would say the GTS is better this year. If you put a gun to my head, now if I won a raffle or something and I got stuck with a WLW 23, oh no, I would still want this bottle over all the over the Handy and the other two non-barrel proof bottles because it's better. Like I said, these are the kings of BTAC, and really kind of ranking the lower proof BTACs number 1 or number 2, it's kind of silly. I don't know why people do that. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. If you wanted to rank, for example, Eagle Rare 17 as the best non-barrel proof bourbon of the year, or high up ranking as the best non-barrel proof bourbon, I'm right on board with you there. I think this year's Eagle Rare 17 is probably the best non-barrel proof bourbon I've ever had, or one of the best for sure. But 50%er just can't compete with the 68% barrel proof. It just can't. There's just a massive gap in flavor and texture and mouthfeel and nose, everything. It's just watered down bourbon. So hopefully this helps you. If somebody puts a gun to your head, this year, if you got a choice between the two, honestly, I think they're close enough to where I would say coin toss, leaning toward the GTS. But if you like the WLW flavor profile, I think this WLW is stronger than people are letting on. I think it's great. I like it more than last year's, for sure. I did side-by-side those, not on video, but I did side-by-side those. So, if you have the choice, I'd lean this way. But if you like WLW, you're not going to be disappointed with this year's WLW. Trust me. This is Bourbon Forage Fishing. Thank you for watching. Take care.